I just need to start it, and you should be live in about 10 seconds. You're live, Councillor Zaffer.
Thank you, Kay. Good evening, colleagues, residents and stakeholders at Lozells. Welcome to the Lozells Ward Forum meeting. We're having to continue to meet remotely because of the guidelines from the government and in light of the current pandemic, the COVID pandemic. We've got a number of items on the agenda. We've hopefully got an update from the West Midlands Police. They haven't joined us as of yet, so we might have to move the agenda around. Unless PC Ali's on the other side of this debate. If you are on the call, if you can just let us know through the chat. We've got Joe Green, who's a senior officer of Birmingham City Council, who's been leading on the work around the low traffic neighbourhoods work across the city, as well as the other active travel projects within our city, who will give us an update on the low traffic neighbourhood in Birmingham. Then I'll give you a very, very brief update, but it'll be more of an opportunity for people to ask questions on me, issues of particular concern. So it'll be an opportunity for residents to type in to the chat section as many questions possible. We will try and answer as many as possible during the course of the meeting. If there's any we can't answer, we will take them away and come back to you directly. So we might have to get some contact details as well if that is the case. Just to let you know that there will be a recording of this meeting, which will go online, I think, from tomorrow onwards. So people who are either on this meeting or weren't able to attend can watch the proceedings of this meeting at a later time. So I don't think that the police are here, so I'm going to hand straight over to Joe Green, who's going to give us an update on the work around the Lozells low traffic neighbourhood and what will be happening in phase 1 of that in particular in the coming weeks. Joe, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Zaffer, and good evening, everyone. I've just got a very sort of short presentation in terms of the Places for People programme and Lozells, and then very happy to open it up for any sort of questions people have got on this. Just to give an overview of Places for People, this is a new programme that we launched in June of this year. And it's all around some of the things we can do across Birmingham to reclaim local streets and neighbourhoods for walking, cycling, playing, socialising, and to try and deliver a number of benefits across these areas in terms of having cleaner air, quieter places and a safer environment. And one of the main ways that we're looking to achieve all of that is by reducing the volume of traffic in local residential areas. This sort of dates back to the start of this year, where we launched a draft Birmingham transport plan for consultation. That was structured around 4 big moves, one of which was prioritising active travel or walking and cycling in local neighbourhoods, looking to introduce a number of measures to support people to get around their local area in that way, to try and tackle the situation that we currently have in many parts of the city, where cars sort of dominate street life around where people live, around where children go to school. And very much sort of based on the premise that we want local neighbourhoods and local centres to be places where people are put first. So that happened at the start of the year. Then in March, we entered a lockdown nationally, and overnight there was a sort of significant reduction in traffic on our streets. One thing that people did sort of comment on during that time, whilst it was obviously a very sort of difficult and challenging period for people and having a serious impact on many people's lives, was that they really did sort of notice the difference in terms of the impact of having less traffic on the street. Back in May, we published the Emergency Birmingham Transport Plan, building on and based on the same vision and big moves as the draft transport plan, but refocusing that on how we could ensure a low carbon, clean air recovery from COVID-19 or learning to live with COVID-19 as we currently are doing. And what that looked to do was provide safer space for local journeys, and also ensuring that people were able to observe social distancing in local areas. Alongside that, the Department for Transport made some funding available to councils, including Birmingham City Council and the West Midlands Combined Authority, through the Emergency Active Travel Fund, which was launched to support measures to encourage walking, cycling, enable social distancing and support places for people. So one thing that we've set up as part of Places for People and in line with the draft transport plan and the emergency transport plan is something called low traffic neighbourhoods. Low traffic neighbourhoods are groups of residential streets where action is taken to restrict or discourage through trips by motor vehicles. Anything that's delivered, residents are still able to drive to their street, to have visitors, to get deliveries, etc. But it looks to reduce the amount of traffic that's just driving straight through an area. Alongside that, we are also looking to reduce the amount of traffic overall. So in terms of some of the situations that we currently have on the main roads across areas, we want to reduce traffic there as well, and also look at how we can provide safer crossings and support for people on those areas too. And ultimately, by reducing traffic, ensuring that it's nicer to be outside, it's quieter and it's safer. And as some people may be aware, Lozells was selected as one of 2 pilot areas for the start of low traffic neighbourhoods in Birmingham as part of the Places for People programme. So I just want to give a very short update in terms of progress to date, what we're currently looking to deliver as part of the first phase of that Lozells pilot, and then finally the what happens next. So over the past couple of months, we have shared a couple of different proposals around creating low traffic neighbourhoods across Lozells, looking at different things that could be done, including some road closures and one-way streets across Lozells. And I think it's sort of fair to say that that's had a bit of a mixed response. Some people were supportive, others were very sort of concerned around the impact that might have. I think that the key thing that's come out of that is it's highlighted that we need to do a lot more work to engage with people locally around what are the right things to bring forward and how we go about creating low traffic neighbourhoods and places for people in Lozells. But I think one thing that really did come out quite clearly from some of the feedback and comments that we've had to date was a high level of support for taking action on streets around local schools. So what we're now looking to bring forward as part of the first phase of the low traffic neighbourhood pilot in Lozells is some measures linked to 2 local primary schools and a couple of other measures. And this falls in line very much with our sort of school streets programme across Birmingham, which looks to reduce congestion, issues with parking, speeding and engine idling around schools. So looking to introduce a one-way loop around Anglesey Primary School on Church Street, Graham Street and Anglesey Street. Also to make a section of Finch Road outside Heathfield Primary School one way. And then look at a couple of no entry restrictions from Lozells Road and Villa Road onto Archibald and Hunters Road. We've basically just finalised the plans and designs for these measures, so further information about what's going to be delivered will be shared this week. We're arranging for a letter drop in the local area and also putting some information online, both on the City Council website and through our Commonplace platform website. We're also working with the Active Wellbeing Society or TORS to arrange some pop-up community events over the next few weeks around these measures being delivered and linking in very much to the 2 schools and some work they're doing with those schools. And this is very much seen as the start of an engagement process for how we deliver across a much wider area over the next few months. And in terms of what that sort of further work and activity will hopefully look like, what we're now doing is putting together a delivery plan for Lozells Places for People based on a 6-month period, where we'll firstly identify the overall area that we're focusing on here, and then over the next month or 2 carry out as much activity as we can to engage with local residents, schools, businesses, and identify what the main traffic issues in the area are, and start to have some conversations about what could be done to address those. From that information, we'll look to develop proposals and consult with people about those. There's also scope in there to do some sort of short-term trials, and that might be just for a few days or a week, where if people think that there's potential for either closing a road or making some changes to street layouts, we can sort of try that on a 1 week short-term trial as a sort of starting point. We'll then make further changes in line with any comments we get back from those and look to bring forward measures early in 2021, initially on a temporary basis, and then monitor and review any changes that are made to identify whether these are things that should continue, but also what else is needed. So we're very much at the start of a process right now. But what we are committed to in terms of the objectives set out in the transport plan and the emergency transport plan is supporting people in Lozells to be able to get around their area safely, to improve some of the issues people face around issues with parking or speeding and things like that, and ensure that we can create places for people across Lozells. So as I say, further information will be shared this week, but very happy to take any questions or comments right now.
Thank you, Joe. Do you want to take your screen sharing down, please? Thanks. I'm not seeing any questions in the question and answer box. I'm sure they'll be coming in shortly. When PC Ali's just joined us, and hopefully Kay can send PC Ali the link to be added to the meeting, and then we can take that an update from PC Ali and the local police team next. So in the coming weeks, Joe, we will get phase 1 of the work which you've shared, which is actually, it's just want to clarify, it's Anglesey Infant School, because the junior school is on a different site. So it's the infant school that we're working on at the moment, and there'll be a one-way loop going around school. The same, there'll be a one-way area outside the Finch Road entrance of Heathrow Primary School. And as somebody who during school time picks and drops off his son from Heathrow School, last week I saw some real issues outside the school with two-way traffic and parents coming in either direction. So hopefully this will help make the area outside the school safe. And we know we've got both schools have been lobbying us for this for many years, and both schools are absolutely supportive of these measures. We will also have a no entry from Lozells Road on the Archibald Road, Lozells Road Junction, so between Carlisle Road and Lozells Road on the Archibald Road. That will be a one-way road. And then we're also looking at after the car park on Hunters Road, just create a one-way area, because there is quite a significant amount of challenges, and historically we've had a petition from local activists asking us to make Hunters Road safer, particularly the area quite close to Villa Road. And these will be brought in under an experimental traffic regulation order. Joe, do you want to tell us a bit more about what that is and how long that lasts and what happens during the course of it and what will happen at the end, please?
Yeah, sure. Basically, we're using experimental traffic regulation orders for a number of schemes that we're currently delivering through the Emergency Transport Plan and Emergency Active Travel Fund. One of the reasons for that is it allows sort of consultation to take place during some sort of temporary trial measures, so it acts as a bit of a live trial, because often with some of these changes we'll sort of go out and start talking to people and say, oh, we've got these ideas, and people have concerns about how it will work, but on local residential streets it's often very hard to sort of model that the way you would do for a major transport project on the main roads. So it sort of acts as a bit of a live trial. What it also does under an experimental traffic regulation order is you have the scope to make changes. So if we put in a one-way street somewhere and people felt that there were issues with how it was working, but there was a tweak or a modification that could be made, then under an experimental traffic regulation order, then we are able to do that, as opposed to something that was more permanent, which we kind of sort of stuck with, and it's more difficult to change. Legally, it can stay in place for a maximum of 18 months. If after that time you do want to make it permanent, then it's necessary to go through a whole formal consultation period. But in Birmingham, with all of the schemes at the moment, we're generally progressing them as 6-month trials. So we're sort of looking over the next few months and arranging for quite a lot of engagement and consultation during that time, because I think something that's really important with this is about making changes to local streets, and it's got to be shaped by the people who live there, visit there, go to take children to school there, and it's about trying to sort of improve the environment and the journeys those people are making. So it needs to be shaped by what they're telling us and also the experience of measures when they are in place.
Thank you for that, Joe. I'm not seeing, that's very helpful. So I'm not seeing any questions. We've got questions in with respect to fly tipping and antisocial behaviour, which we will pick up at the relevant points of the meeting, but we're not getting any questions in, any further questions with respect to the low traffic neighbourhood. Can I, one final question from me, Joe. So this is phase 1, which is likely to come in the next few weeks. When would phase 2 come in, which is obviously looking at the measures around Carpenter's Road, Lozells Street, Burberry Street, Anglesey Street, Church Street and Will Street?
So I think with the second phase of measures, what we're basically looking to do is deliver that over the next 6 months. Part of it is sort of linked to additional funding through Department for Transport, but we're hoping that that will all be confirmed very soon. So I think on the back of these measures going in, we are looking to start that conversation to get out and about in the area around the schools, working with them tours as well and other local groups to get people's views on what else is needed or what should come next. So I would say that that's something that will happen over the next sort of 6 months. I think there's a bit of a balance. So some things we might be able to bring in quite quickly if there was a lot of support and people were keen to see some changes. But I think also it is important that you allow a bit of time to really engage with local residents and to get them to help shape what it is that we're doing. So I imagine most of the sort of second phase of measures would be on the ground early in the new year, so sort of January, February 2021. But if there are things that people are keen to see sooner than that, then we potentially do have ways of sort of fast tracking some measures, but definitely over the next 6 months.
Great, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Okay, we've got a question that's coming from Raj, and the question is, how will the no entry roads be enforced? I foresee people ignoring the new layouts.
So generally it will be sort of through the normal sort of signs that we put in, but also some infrastructure changes to try and sort of enable that at those locations. So it might be that we're sort of reducing the junction width at the entry points or restricting that in some ways. In a couple of them, we're also setting up contraflow cycle lane in the opposite direction. So that should sort of help to restrict the potential for people to go up there. So we are looking to deliver it in a way that makes it harder for people to go down those no entry points. But with any one way, it is sort of based on drivers complying with the signage and the restrictions that are in place. It's something that we'll monitor very sort of closely in the early stages. If we're identifying that there's a particular location where there's an issue with compliance, where people are ignoring the one-way signs, then it is something that we'll work with our own civil enforcement and the police to see what we're able to do to put some enforcement linked to that as well, or if there is a need for further engineering measures to make those turns a lot harder for people to make, or to put sort of physical restrictions in the road that just allows almost like gateways so it's only possible to sort of come out in one direction. So it's certainly something that we're going to need to keep a very close eye on early stages to make sure everything's working as intended and that people are complying with the new road layouts.
Okay, thanks, Joel. I think in terms of okay, there's a question here. How can you I'll publish it first. How can you justify displacing pollution onto excluded roads? What about the children and the vulnerable adults there? So I think that what this particular person is referring to is we want to divert those that are rat running on residential roads to less residential roads on the A roads and the B roads, so onto the main roads of Nursery Road, onto the main road of Lozells Road, and onto Heathfield Road too. So that's what the question is referring to.
Sure, I mean it's something that comes up quite a bit in terms of low traffic neighbourhoods as an approach, and understandably so. What we are looking to do is try to restrict through traffic that's using residential streets, and to encourage that traffic to use the more sort of strategic key route network, the main roads, but we also recognise that people live on those main roads and that they're residential areas as well. Nothing that we're doing is looking to increase traffic, and one thing that we want to do by making streets safer for people to walk or cycle is hope that some people will look to walk or cycle for local trips. So it may be that some of the journeys that are currently being made on those main roads switch to alternative means of travel. Also, we're not delivering this in isolation. We're delivering this alongside a whole host of other measures through the Birmingham Transport Plan, an emergency transport plan, including building safe cycle routes like on the A34, investment in public transport. I know at the current time it's quite difficult for some people to use public transport, or we're discouraging some people to do that, but over time that's certainly one of the ways that we'll want people to travel. And I think in terms of sort of air pollution, we know that a lot of that is linked to traffic, and across the city through our clean air strategy and Brum Breathes, we're taking a whole sort of host of measures to clean up vehicles that are in place, to provide financial support to enable people to move to cleaner, greener forms of travel. So it's something that's really, really important as part of the overall vision and plan, and certainly not something that we're trying to do to encourage more traffic onto any roads. What we're doing is looking to reduce congestion, reduce air pollution across the whole city, whether that's on residential streets or main roads.
Thank you. There's another question that's come up. Can you confirm the benefits of a low traffic neighbourhood? Because in other parts of the country there are some successful implementation. So I think you did run through the benefits, but do you want to just reiterate that?
Yeah, I mean the benefits really is what we're trying to do is improve residential streets so that they're quieter, safer places with less congestion, with less air pollution, and that people feel sort of safe to walk and cycle, but also just to be on those streets. So looking at some of the measures that we've put in other parts of the city over the last few weeks, what's noticeable as you go out there is that neighbours are stopping to chat to each other, obviously socially distanced and everything at the moment, but there's more sort of activity within residential areas. It may be that children feel sort of safer to be out in those streets. So I think what we're looking to do is, we know that a lot of streets across Birmingham really sort of suffer by being this car dominated environment at the moment. If traffic is cutting through an area, is speeding, it's causing air pollution, then that's having a really detrimental impact on people's lives. And what we're looking to do is to try and remove a lot of through traffic from residential areas, encourage people to walk and cycle where they can, and to improve the sort of whole environment across these streets.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I was speaking on mute. There's one other question that's come in. It's quite a challenging question, but we're not going to shy away from these. Traffic evaporation has not been proven So is this not just a social cleansing or gentrification process?
I mean, I think there are some studies around traffic evaporation, and that's linked to sort of academic research, and there is something, but I think it also sort of feeds into the fact that if we do create local areas where people do feel safer to walk and cycle, more people will choose that. That's something that's quite a lot when we go out and talk to people about why they don't. They say it's because they don't feel it's safe to do that. But I also sort of recognise that we need to monitor these schemes very closely. We need to look at what the impact is on surrounding streets. We are setting up regular monitoring and traffic counts on some of the main roads so that we can sort of keep an eye on what impact this is having. And I certainly sort of wouldn't say it's something that I term social cleansing. This is very much as part of the transport plan around trying to sort of create the vision that we want to see for Birmingham, where safe, sustainable forms of transport are the modes of choice. And what we're looking to do is put in place a whole sort of series of measures and opportunities that enable that to happen. And that's for the whole of Birmingham. This isn't about sort of turning one area against another or one street against another. This is a vision for the whole of the city, and this is what we want to see in terms of places for people across the whole of Birmingham.
Yeah, and absolutely making the streets safer, in particular outside schools, so our communities, particularly young people, can enjoy the local neighbourhood, which over the years has become far too dominant by private car. I remember there's a number of locations where over the years young people used to enjoy that space, play in those spaces. We're no longer able to do that because young people are no longer able to do that because of how dominant cars are, and at times there's cars parked there too because we know it's such a waste of space. Parked cars right across the city and right across the country. There's a question here about how many other parts of the city are having LTN. So as Joe said, Kings Heath and Lozells are two pilot areas. There's conversations taking place with a number of other areas, and there's a number of smaller measures that we've already started to introduce. I think Moseley has had a measure, hasn't it, Joe?
Yeah, so Kings Heath and Lozells are the two first low traffic neighbourhood pilots, which is a sort of area wide approach, but we are also delivering some early measures in Moseley, in Bourneville and in Castle Vale. And those are places where we'll look to develop further activity in the coming months. What we're also seeing now on the back of delivering some of these first pilot schemes is we're getting other parts of the city where residents are sending in either sort of requests or inquiries about how they might have low traffic neighbourhoods where they live across the city. I think there's a bit of a balance between taking a sort of real area wide approach and ensure that you're removing through traffic from the whole area as opposed to just delivering measures on one or two streets, which can sometimes displace traffic onto neighbouring or parallel roads. Obviously, the larger an area you deliver across, or the more measures you look to put in place, the greater the costs. So it's looking at the available budgets, and I think this is something that will take take a number of years to roll out across the city. It's something that where they've been developing this in parts of London, it's been continuing for 5-6 years, and it is still ongoing. So this isn't something that is created overnight. It is sort of long term, but it is certainly something that we're committed to extending across the city.
Okay, so there's a couple more questions, and I'm going to make these the final couple of questions on LTN. Will the parking spaces be removed along Lozells Road when the scheme is introduced, as it will cause extra traffic on Main Road? This will help traffic flow. At this stage, there are no plans to remove any parking spaces on Lozells Road. I don't think that will be necessary. I'm quite confident, and we at the council are quite confident that Lozells Road can handle any small increase of traffic, which will no longer be able to utilise the residential roads where the LTN will be introduced. And this is more of a comment. LTN sound like the way forward. Good to see Birmingham is at the lead of this programme. Thank you for that comment, whoever made that comment. I think the key thing for us in Birmingham is to reduce the over-reliance of private car and to make our streets safer for all, in particular our children. And we clearly think that this is a potential way forward. So over the next few months, we will be trialling out these measures in Lozells, and then we'll take you from there. If after the maximum of 6-month period, it's not worked, we will remove it. If it has worked and needs some minor adjustments, we will make those minor adjustments and then look to introduce permanent measures. Okay, let's just see what we've got here. Another quick question comment. I think LTN's time has come. The COVID pandemic has caused people to look at how they live their lives. I think people have become they value their green and blue space and areas within the neighbourhood a lot more now during this COVID pandemic too. So we've clearly seen that. And there's one about there's a comment or a question around Cambridge Road in Moseley is one of the wealthiest streets in the city, yet you've prevented traffic from entering from the west and effectively channeled traffic down poorer parts of King's. So I'm not I think this is a matter for King's Heath. We're in Lozells. Happy to take any questions relating to Lozells. So I'm just going to say thank you to Joe. Thank you for joining us this evening to give us an update on the LTN. And I'm sure you'll be back at a future meeting to tell us about how things are going from a citywide perspective in terms of Lozells, and also to answer any questions that we may have. So thanks, Joe. I'll be more than happy for you to carry on and enjoy the rest of your evening away from this meeting.
Thanks very much, and have a good evening, everyone.
Cheers. Do we now have PC Ali on this side of the call? Okay, any luck?
I'm sorry, Councillor Zaffer, we haven't managed to be able to get him in. He's obviously listening in, but we haven't been able to actually get him onto the call. Apologies for that.
PC Ali, are you able to? Can you hear us? Can you just type into the chat if you are still on the call with us? Okay, we're not getting any answers, but there was some questions on that I want to go back to. So there's a question: why can't we have more flowers planted in Newtown? There was some work we were doing pre-COVID with the Horizon Street Watch Group. This is the Horizon Neighbourhood, which is just behind the Lighthouse Young People Centre, for those that know where the Lighthouse Young People Centre is, and looking at how we can do that. Now, there were some conversations we were having with the community there pre-COVID to look at tackling some of the ASB issues, antisocial behaviour issues that we've got there. We will revisit a conversation with them in the near future. COVID has obviously hindered our ability to engage in the community. Those flower beds that we do currently have in Lozells are led by a community organisation, Aspire and Succeed, where they've got volunteers from across the neighbourhood, particularly people like Mr. T and Kabir, who have led the way working with the organisation. We obviously as a council have been supportive and allowed them to be placed on the highway, but this has largely been led by the community. So if anybody does have any interest within that particular area on the Horizon or anywhere else in the Lozells neighbourhood, you can always drop me an email and I'll be more than happy to link you up with any community organisation that's doing this or any department in the council. There was a question around fly tipping on the junction of Burley Street and Burberry Street and Graham Street. Fly tipping is a serious issue for us in Lozells. Every day I have to deal with a number of occurrences of fly tipping that local residents report to me. And what I try to do is send the council waste enforcement team in first to see if there's any evidence that can link an address or an individual or individuals or business to the fly tipping to carry out some enforcement, and then later on we get this cleared. So if you do come across any enforcement, do drop me an email, or if you've got my mobile number, WhatsApp me the details and we will act as soon as possible. Obviously starting off with the as a measure on enforcement and then also clearing it up. There was also a comment around antisocial behaviour on the same patch, and this has been raised to me by community activists over a long period of time. The police have increased surveillance in that particular area, and what I would advise you to do is report the matter on 101 to the West Midlands Police, and the more logs they get, the more of a priority they will make this. And I have had conversations with Sergeant Sean Stanley, who's unfortunately on leave today and can't join us, about the importance of that. And I know from the conversation I've been having that they are stepping up surveillance in that particular area. But please do report it to the police. Even if they don't come out on that particular evening, there will be a log of it. Once there's a number of logs, they will absolutely seek to take action. So PC Ali is currently writing on the chat some aspects of the police focus on has been on Villa Road, and I'm going to let people be able to read that. To answer the question, is Newtown in Lozells. So there is a Newtown ward which is represented by Councillor Zia Islam. Some people will classify the area around Holt School as Newtown. That is within the Lozells ward. So the New Horizon estate is by and large within the Lozells ward. But if there are issues that you want to raise that don't come into the Lozells ward and actually come into Newtown, I can always pass them on to my colleague, Councillor Islam. There's a question here, why can't you have a simple one-way system going up and down rather than the proposed plan for me going past my house and coming back on myself 2 streets ways, which will cause more pollution? By the way, Church Street is much narrow and it won't be able to cope with the two-way traffic. Here, what you're saying about Church Street and two-way traffic, that's been raised by a number of people to me, so we will ensure that that particular section, the middle bit of Church Street, is a one-way section when we move into phase 2 to deliver that bit. A simple one-way system doesn't stop rat running, it increases rat running. So our whole aim is to reduce rat running and keep those that use the residential roads to drive through them and that have no direct link to them, to keep them on the main roads. So that is the reason why we don't want to go down the route of one way up or one way down, because from the work that we've done, not just in Birmingham but across the country, we know that that one way in, one way out doesn't actually reduce or distract the rat running. So PC Ali's put on here, primary police focus in the Lozells area has been on Villa Road. I will touch upon that in a second about Villa Road. We have done some extensive targeted area patrols on Villa Road for 1 month, which involved dedicated patrols on the road during every shift, where 2 officers were conducting foot patrols. The main issues we are looking at were drug dealing, antisocial behaviour and street drinking. Just to add, for fly tipping, I would encourage residents and businesses to use the Fix My Street app. PC Ali, a question for you from Raj. What are you doing about aggressive begging on Lozells, please? In Lozells, please. There's a question here, how many calls have to be logged before action will be taken? Really depends on the level of the log. If there's an emergency and a live emergency, the police, I'm sure, would send resources. If it's not deemed as an emergency, then they would prioritise it in terms of that. But maybe PC Ali can write a comment on that. Whilst PC Ali does write a comment, I just want to give an update on a couple of things which are police related. One is there was 2 licensing applications made. One for a late opening and alcohol license at the African Village, which was rejected by the licensing subcommittee. The police did not object to it. Over 400 local residents did. I, as a local council, did and represented the local residents at the licensing subcommittee meeting. I had a conversation with the local police because I was disappointed that they didn't object to this particular application. I note that the applicants have appealed this, and this matter is going to the Magistrates Court. There was another application on Villa Road. It was the Flamingo Cafe, which wanted to move from where they were currently and applied for a license at the Old Bull's Head 104 Villa Road. Again, not only did the police not object, they agreed some conditions with the applicant before the meeting, and ultimately, I think around 100 people, local people, objected through a petition. I haven't got the exact number. It might be a bit less, it might be a bit more than that. I, as a local councillor, objected. Councillor Mahmood is saying that the neighbouring councillor objected. Me and a local residents attended the licence subcommittee, but in light of the agreement of the conditions by the police and the applicant, the licensing subcommittee decided to approve the application. So the old Bull's Head, which was once closed down by the police, will have an alcohol license operating from there through the Flamingo Bar and Cafe. But the conditions that have been agreed are quite strict, so I hope that we won't have any problems there. Just to read out the response in terms of begging from PC Ali, we understand begging is a big issue. We have been dealing with this by trying to encourage with the individuals, as many of them are vulnerable and require further support. These usually take place with an initial verbal warning. This is then escalated to a community protection warning, which has conditions attached. Furthermore, if this is then breached, the individual begging receives a community protection notice with the same conditions. If this is breached once again, then enforcement action is taken. A question for PC Ali: how serious does the police take breaches of COVID guidelines? How many calls have to be logged for action to be taken? PC Ali can respond to that question around COVID, please. So there's a question come in. What about rubbish on our streets? It's very sad that we've got fly tipping is a serious problem in Birmingham, but also here in Lozells. Like I said earlier, I get a lot of fly tipping reported to me, which I report to the waste enforcement team and then also to the waste management team to come out and collect. I think it's really important. I'd be surprised if much of this rubbish comes from outside Lozells. Unfortunately, some of our own neighbours, some of our own local residents who are responsible for this. And it is a very, very small minority, because the vast majority of people in Lozells have immense pride in the area. I know historically private rented properties have been an issue. So if you do come across anybody you think is responsible for any fly tipping, do report that anonymously to the council, do report it anonymously to me, and we will do all our best to carry out enforcement action against them. There has been some very high profile enforcement cases. More recently, there was somebody from Hodgill who was fined £24,000 for fly tipping. So if we do have the right evidence and we can take the matter forward through the court system, through the justice system, we will do that. The traffic is never going to make any difference. It will soon become a diversion route more frequently, especially on Greeley Street. Everyone has a right to their opinion. We will wait and see how the low traffic neighbourhood pans out. PC Ali, thank you to you and to all your colleagues for the work you do. We could do with more visibility of the men and boys in blue, particularly since the recent reported shooting incidents. I think more police presence is something we'd all like as a deterrent. There are issues around resources, and I know we've had more resources allocated, particularly around the Villa Road area. If we can get more, that'd be really helpful. And the response from PCLE is we do, as a neighbourhood team, look at all logs in terms of actions and building the picture. The more logs we have, the more intel we have. This helps us target the problem in terms of what times do we need to we need to provide police presence, etc. So that's a valid question. We take, again from PC Ali, we take COVID breaches very seriously. Sometimes this can be difficult to resource given the number of calls. As a neighbourhood, we regularly attend logs that relate to parties, etc., and do take action and close these down. Similarly with businesses, we carried out regular curfew checks in the area. And again from PC Ali, again, any breaches that you are aware of, please call 101 for allocation. PC Ali, the City Council has done much to highlight the Domestic Abuse Awareness Month in October. Thank you to the Cabinet. What are the numbers of incidents in our locality? So PC Ali, can you tell us about domestic abuse cases, or the numbers rather, in Lozells, if you got access to that information, please? I'm just waiting for any other questions to come through. This is really helpful. This is the first time I've used this mechanism to host a meeting, and I think it's working pretty well. But if you've got any feedback, please do send me some feedback. I'm just typing in my do send me your feedback on how you think this has worked by email, please. The meeting will be uploaded and a link will be shared. Are there any other questions that need to be asked either to myself as the ward councillor or to the West Midlands Police? This can relate to any series of Lozells related matters, please. I'm pretty sure we've covered off all the questions I've been asked in the meeting. If there's something that you feel that hasn't been responded to, please do put it in again and we will do our best to answer it. So I've just had a message to say this is an excellent method of community engagement. Thank you. I guess nothing beats physical face-to-face meetings, but in the current COVID environment, we have to utilize modern day technology. I just want to say thank you to Pat and to Kay who have been helping us, and also to Leslie. Unfortunately, Leslie isn't with us this evening due to a family bereavement, but I just want to say thank you to them for helping set up this meeting. How many food banks in Lozells? So it's a very good question. I'll tell you of the food banks that I know of and the work that amazing people and community activists and organisations have been doing across Lozells. So I know that the Nishkam Centre have been doing some really good work and have been doing some fantastic work over a long period of time at the top on the junction of Soho Road and Villa Road. Moving down, the New Testament Church of God, Handsworth, on Lozells Road. I know, and I visited their food bank. That again does some remarkable work in the community. I know that St Mary's Convent may not necessarily have a food bank, but they still continue to support vulnerable people and have done so for a very long time. They're an outstanding organisation. The Lozells Methodist Community Centre have also been supporting vulnerable people. Aspire and Succeed have been providing a lot of advice support, and they've also been providing food hampers for those that absolutely need them in our neighbourhood and in our surrounding neighbourhoods. And I'm also aware of the amazing work that the church opposite on Lozells Road, opposite Wheeler Street, where Bishop Dr. Desmond Jadu has been leading that the work there in the community with his team and the work they've done, and they've obviously a number of these have had support from Birmingham City Council too, but there's a lot of positive stuff happening and has happened during the course of this pandemic. We've also seen a number of the faith institutions, some of the work that Lozells Central Mosque have been doing has been quite outstanding. And many of the organisations in Lozells are not just helping the community here in Lozells, which is important, but they're providing citywide leadership too. And Lozells Central Mosque, the Nishkam Centre, the New Testament Church of God, and many other organisations, just an example of the amazing work that happens. And then you've also got the citywide organisation, Citizens UK Birmingham, which work right across Birmingham, but they have a very strong presence in Lozells and Newtown, where a number of their member institutions come from. Given that children are going hungry, how are we going to support our vulnerable communities? So through the schools, Birmingham City Council is ensuring that no vulnerable child goes hungry. So Birmingham City Council made an announcement through our leader Ian Ward last Friday that we will provide free school meals to all 61,733, I think it is, children that are on free school meals. So if any child in Lozells is vulnerable and does not have access to food, please do contact me and give me the information anonymously, please. We will ensure, whether it's the council or the community organisations in Lozells, that we provide them with the right support. COVID has brought out some of the best in people, absolutely, and activists, schools, faith institutions, community organisations in Lozells have been at the heart of it. At the start of October to now, we have had 35 reports of domestic violence. The previous month there was 40, so this has a decrease of 5. Can I just ask PC Ali, is this Lozells or is this Lozells at the East Handsworth ward, the old ward area? Can you just confirm that, please? What about pollution? Is the Lozells and LTN a TTRO or ETR? Is it an experimental traffic regulation order? PC Ali, we are constantly working to improve the awareness, enforce and provide regular training for officers. Thank you. Are there any other questions for the police, for myself? It's coming up to 6 o'clock. I'm sure people want to get back to their families. This has been a very, very engaging session. It's incredibly welcome. I really appreciate the fact that we've had so many residents attend and ask questions of myself, of the police and of Joe Green with respect to the low traffic neighbourhood. So there's a question here about 35 reports of DV this month and 40 last month. That is horrifying. Absolutely, one report is one report too many. What is being done to support the victims and prosecute the offenders? Question is, how many are in attendance? Kay, are we able to say, or will that information be available later? I think you told me earlier it'd be available later.
Yeah, Councillors, I can check tomorrow when I print it out. But so far, a rough estimate is about 16.
Sorry, 16. Okay, I didn't quite hear that. And you've gone back on mute.
Sorry, Councillor Zaffer. Yeah, I'll be able to check tomorrow the exact numbers, but a rough estimate at the moment is about 16.
16. Okay.
Yeah,
thank you. PC Ali, thank you for clarifying that. The figures that were shared around domestic abuse are related to Lozells and East Handsworth, the old ward of Lozells and East Handsworth, which the police are continue to operate within. The meeting was advertised until 6:30 PM. I'm happy to stay on if there's any further questions. Got no issues about that whatsoever. Thank you for sharing your email address, PC Ali. And just to remind people, if there is an issue around reporting crime, please phone 101, or if it's an emergency, phone 999. It's important you do that because I don't think this email is monitored at all times. So it's important to log criminal activity at the relevant numbers. So are there any other questions from local residents? Any other concerns? Anything you'd like to be picked up at a future meeting of the ward forum? In response to the question from the local resident with respect to DV offences, with any DV offences, referrals are always made, and we do our best to protect victims by ensuring safeguarding is conducted. Okay, you're doing a great job, Councillor. Okay, thank you for that positive feedback towards what I'm doing. Will you compensate for people who lose out financially from the LTA imposition? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Can we have an update on domestic violence? The numbers are awful. We can have an update at a future meeting, which will be included in the West Midlands Police update. And no doubt we can monitor this. And I know of some amazing organisations, not just that work right across the city, including Lozells, and support victims of domestic abuse. PC Ali, is your colleague? Oh, is the colleague from the Violence Reduction Unit? Is it Matt Stone? I think. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if that's the right name. Online? If so, can you just put something on the chat, please? Offenders are processed through the Crown Prosecution Service. That's the response from PC Ali. Can I just take this opportunity whilst we wait for any further comments or questions to remind people we are still battling the pandemic of COVID. The numbers across Birmingham will continue to go up, not at the rates that in some areas, in particular the north, but they still are continuing to go up, and we continue to face challenges here in Lozells. So please abide by the government guidelines. We are in tier 2, so there is restrictions on indoor mixing, indoor household mixings, and just remember, do not, we've got to get the basics right. Wear face coverings indoors, wear face coverings outdoors if you can. Wash your hands, minimum of 20 seconds, using soap. And if you haven't got soap, please do use sanitizer whenever and wherever possible too. And obviously adhere to the social distancing guidelines, ideally 2 meters when you're indoors and in your outdoors too. That would really, really help. So remember, we've got to get the basics right to continue to fight against this very, very serious illness that continues to take lives. I've had reports of deaths today, not in Lozells, but across the city. Colleagues and friends have phoned me to notify me of particular people passing away. So the COVID fight is a real fight on our hands. The Lozells LTN will create winners and losers. Those in suddenly quieter streets will see their property values increase, while those in newly created ghettos will see the opposite. How will you compensate the losers in Lozells? I take offence to the word ghettos. This is not about creating any ghettos. What we're clearly trying to do is restrict residential road travel in Lozells to those residents that live in Lozells, or their visitors, or people dropping off to them, or picking things up from there. We want to restrict through traffic that uses Lozells for their rat running, particularly the residential roads. That's what we're trying to do. And we're bringing, this is not a permanent measure, we're bringing in this measure through an experimental traffic regulation order which can last a maximum of 6 months. And when during that period of time, we will quite clearly continue to have conversations with a good level of engagement with the local community to see the impact that is having on all the roads. And we may have to make some amendments, we may have to take it out altogether, or we may have to bring it in permanently. So everything's on the cards, nothing's been taken off the table. How will you be working with the West Midlands Lord Mayor to ensure that government pro videos appropriate financial support from the region during lockdown? So I think you're referring to the West Midlands Mayor. The leader of Birmingham City Council, Councillor Ian Ward, has numerous meetings. He chairs a weekly meeting with Met leaders from across the West Midlands, and also meets with the West Midlands Mayor and representatives of the West Midlands Combined Authority, as well as government representatives, to ensure that we are getting the right level of support from government. We've been disappointed that the government hasn't given extra resources to our city, in particular the hospitality sector, which is crippled and which is on its needs and needs the right level of support, particularly once we moved into tier 2. We're also very disappointed that the government didn't decide to provide free schools meals for the children that desperately need them during these holidays too, and that's why we stepped up. We will always work across political boundaries with the Conservative Mayor of the West Midlands or the Conservative government to ensure that we are working in the best interests of our city, region and country. Again, if there from PCLE, again, if there is an interest in this, we can look to have a representative during the next meeting for further DV specific questions. Always happy to facilitate that. Thank you for the offer. And another comment from PCLE, unfortunately not the Public Protection Unit deal with all matters of DV. I'm unsure what colleagues you're referring to. I think I missed this. Street Watch is a fantastic way to get involved. Should anyone want to volunteer, please contact us to find out more. I know that a number of local activists are involved in Street Watch in Lozells. Excuse me. Will the Commonwealth Games be the sporting and economical lift that this area needs? The 11 days of sport are important, but what's far more important than that is the level of investment that's coming into Perry Bar, just down the road from us, and in other areas of the region as a result of the Commonwealth Games. And I think there will be a fantastic opportunity, in particular as we head forward to further difficult economic times because of the challenges of this pandemic. And potentially because of leaving the European Union, which is around the corner too. So I think it's really, really important that we, as a region, and particularly us here in the north of Birmingham, do what we can to benefit from the economic lift. And we also hope, in terms of sport, that young people are inspired to get more physically active, and hopefully that will also reverse health inequalities in our neighbourhood and across the city. Is the money being spent on the Commonwealth Games the best use of money? As I said, it's a fantastic investment for. I think the council estimates for every £1 we put in locally, we get £3 of external investment into our area, and that's coming at a time when we, as a city and region, desperately need investment and support to the local economy. So I think the Commonwealth Games are a fantastic opportunity for the city and region to really lift many local businesses and create employment opportunities and skills development opportunities for our citizens. Right, I think I'm going to now call the meeting to an end. I think it's been a very, very useful engagement session. Do send me your feedback, drop me an email, wasim.zuffer@birmingham.gov.uk on how we can improve this, how you think the meeting's gone. I want to say a particular thank you to PCLE for joining us. I want to say a thank you to Pat White and Kay Thomas for helping facilitate today's session. I also want to thank Joe Green, who joined us earlier too. So thank you all. I'm going to bring the meeting to a close. Have a good evening, and we will no doubt see you in the near future, God willing.